Well, I'm really pleased to be here for the office opening. It feels right. We are packing a place where we know the people, and I hope all of you are thinking about it. How many hours a day, a week, a month can you give to the Guelph Green campaign to make sure that Guelph is the riding and Mike Schreiner is the candidate who finally makes the breakthrough to Queen's Park for the Green Party of Ontario. When you trace where the Greens have gone, it is true. I mean, one of the things that I find really remarkable about media is there's certain two things. One is, initially, the Greens can never win a seat anywhere. And then once we did, that's the only one we're going to get. It's amazing. There's no hiccup in the assumption pattern. So when I was running against Gary Lunn, who was a member of Stephen Harper's cabinet in 2011, there was a very strong perception and assumption across the country that a Green candidate couldn't defeat a sitting cabinet minister and couldn't defeat a Conservative. And on Sandwich Gulf Islands, Gary Lunn had been the MP for 14 years.
Wow.
Now, when he was defeated, they said, well, yeah, that was going to happen. So what was great about it was, of course, that voters realized that something cool was happening. And they stayed excited about the Green opportunity, the opportunity to vote Green on southern Vancouver Island. And that's how it was that Andrew Weaver became the first Green candidate to break through to a provincial legislature. And again, defeated a sitting cabinet member, by the way, and was elected in Victoria, representing the riding of Oak Bay Gordon Head. Now, something else that Andrew and I have in common, a few of these other have in common, but I'm going to keep going, because the next person to make the breakthrough was David Coon, leader of the Green Party of New Brunswick, winning in New Brunswick, defeating a sitting cabinet minister, where they were really quite sure, well, Greens aren't going to go anywhere in New Brunswick. By the way, as soon as David Coon became the first Green MLA in the New Brunswick legislature, the incoming premier designated the Green Party of New Brunswick with official party status as the official third party in New Brunswick, because there are no NDP MLAs in New Brunswick's legislature. So it's a Liberal majority, progressive conservative opposition, and the third party, and what any media will tell you when you get them off the record, is that David Coon is the official opposition in the province of New Brunswick. Then in Prince Edward Island, again, I know some of you may have seen Saturday's Globe, there was a lovely profile of Green Party leader Peter Bevan Baker, focusing on the fact that he was the great-grandson of George Brown, who was part of the great-great-grandson of George Brown, who was one of the founders of Confederation at the gathering in Charlottetown in 1867. Never mind his Scottish and Canadian roots. But when Peter won, it was the same thing. He got elected when they didn't think a Green was going to get elected. Now, what Peter Bevan Baker and David Coon and Andrew Weaver and I all have in common is that in our particular elections, the voter turnout in our riding was the highest in that election. Yeah. So in Sandwich Gulf Islands in 2011, my riding had just under 75% voter turnout when the national was 60%. And for Andrew Weaver, again, over 70%. For David Coon, the highest in New Brunswick. My favorite is Peter Bevan Baker. His riding, he was elected with 92% voter turnout. So when you have people, and they will say this, they'll say, oh, well, you know, but you're going to be splitting the vote, you're going to be this to the vote, you're doing things. What we're doing is growing a vote. And it's so far in lockstep. So when I was re-elected in 2015 in Sandwich Gulf Islands, my riding had just under 80% voter turnout. Because people who believe you're going to vote for something good and actually get it, believe it or not, they turn out to vote in larger numbers because they feel good about what they're doing. And this is what you can offer the voters in Guelph. Voters in Guelph are a Green population, small g Green, we know that. We know all of it. The City Council in Guelph has led the way on many issues over many years. All kinds of issues around separating of organics and recycling and doing it right and fighting Nestle. And my gosh, we've got a great track record of the small g Green events in Guelph. And when people get excited about the fact that they can go to vote, and actually see the policies they believe in, that they've been fighting for, not just something that they yell at Queen's Park about, but they send their MLA into Queen's Park to do the work for them, the way I do, the way Andrew does, the way David Coon does, the way Peter Bevan Baker does. And when we got that voter turnout May 9th across British Columbia to vote Green, It's great to elect 3 Green MLAs, but I think even more astonishing is that it was across the province, 17% of the popular vote was Green. Now, if we had fair voting, a topic we'll take up later tonight, it would have been clearly more than 3 Green MLAs. My MLA, representing where I live, Saanich North in the Islands, is Adam Olson, who is the first Sartland First Nations person to represent Wasanich people in the legislature. Sonia First now representing Shawnigan Lake and the area up in the Cowichan, and Andrew Weaver, who of course is a Nobel Prize winning climate scientist. Any one of them is spectacular. The 3 of them together operate like as a caucus should. And they could have said to John Horgan, okay, you can get power if you give us a bunch of things. We all want to be in cabinet. No. They actually said no to any thought other than we will stay as an opposition party. We will do a confidence and supply agreement that will support the New Democratic Party only as long as it keeps these core promises, which include that British Columbia is now the first government in Canada operating under the terms of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. British Columbia is going to return to raising our carbon tax the way that the tax was originally intended, and once again assume a position that looks like climate leadership, that we will use every possible legal tool available to us to fight the Kinder Morgan pipeline, that we will do what it takes to fight poverty in BC. So when you look at and we'll move to fair voting. Right. Yeah. So when you get 3 Green MLAs, the agenda of the party that had 40% of the popular vote, that was the NDP, the Liberals had 40% of the popular vote. That's actually not big L Liberals, like, this is a completely different party that you can understand as being a coalition of the SO-Cred and whatever might be left of a federal Liberal party. They're very right-wing. So they had 40%, the NDP had 40%. The Greens had 17% of the popular vote and had to decide, what do the people of British Columbia want? That's what Adam meant by balance of responsibility. What do we do with this? We've got 3 seats. Added to the NDP seats, they'd have a majority. Added to the Liberal seats, they'd have a majority. What's in the best interest of British Columbians here? No other party would have made the decisions that the Greens made for the reasons the Greens made those decisions, because it was all about responsibility. The people of BC do not want to go right back to the polls. We can form a government. This is how Westminster parliamentary democracy works, and we will be, as best we can be as British Columbians, an example to the rest of Canada that makes the point that in the Westminster parliamentary system, it really matters who you elect to be your MLA, because it's not just a popularity contest for who's going to be premier. It matters the quality of the local representation you have. So that's why I'm so confident in Mike Schreiner, because I've known Mike for years before either of us were in the Green Party. Mike and I have a number of things in common. It's not required that your birthday be June 9th to be a leader of the Green Party. But Mike and I have that in common. Not the same year. He's just a baby still. Years of good work left in that kid. So when we get him elected to Queen's Park, and I tell you, I'll be back here as often as Mike wants me back, as often as I can be here and still do my job for the voters of Saanich Gulf Islands, being in Parliament, being back home in my riding. Guelph is a place where all those pundits who keep saying, you'll be amazed at how they won't stop you on the street and say, gee, you were right, I was wrong all that time. They'll just immediately move into the next default assumption, yeah, we knew that was happening. we knew Mike Schreiner would be the next MLA for Guelph. We knew that. We just, kept it to ourselves. So be prepared that you're going to be part of the breakthrough, that people will then say, yeah, we knew that. But right now, we know it. We know it. We can spread the word. We can get our friends and our neighbors out knocking on doors and coming back to make sure that when the dust settles after the next Ontario election, there's been a vast improvement to democracy within Queen's Park. Yeah! Because that's the difference one Green MLA will make.